The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar on becoming an AST for the Coffee Technicians Program. My name is Sierra. I'm a communications coordinator for the SCA, and I'm here with Ben Helt, content manager for SCA Education. Ben's going to walk us through this great webinar that he's prepared. And we're just going to give it a couple seconds for people to arrive in the webinar. And then I'm going to let Ben take it away. So thanks, everyone, for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sierra. I always really appreciate your support in putting these on and helping us stay on track with all these things. Sierra will be kind of in the background, making sure that I don't miss any questions that you might have as we go through this and keeping us on track. So thank you, Sierra, for providing that service for us. It's 10 a.m. here in the central time zone of the United States, and I'm broadcasting to you from a pretty special place. This is Workbench Coffee Labs in Kansas City, Missouri. And it's quite apropos that we're talking about the AST application process for the forthcoming Coffee Technicians Program here, because it was, 4 years ago that a group of very interested and motivated individuals wanted to create a Coffee Technicians Guild within the SCA. And this building is where they met first. And so a coming together of people who wanted to develop a community of people who are support the entire specialty coffee supply chain and value chain by making sure that our equipment works and help support that entire line. And so one of the things that was important to this group from the very beginning were education opportunities for those who deal with coffee technology, and eventually some sorts of certifications by which they could communicate that they've invested in the training and the education to do a good job working on the coffee technology of customers and whatnot. So I'm pretty excited to be using this space to talk to you about this topic today. A little bit about me. I got into coffee after being in public education for several years. I did community relations work and communication work in adult education in the public schools sphere before I got into the specialty coffee. I did so as being a first-time roaster, first-time barista, and first-time business owner all at the same time, which is not a good idea. Would not recommend that. But it worked for me. I was surrounded by some great people here in Kansas City that helped make that possible, including Marty Rowe, my service technician who kept us up and running, and learned a lot there. Eventually, sold that wholesale part of my business, and that became the seeds of what became Messenger Coffee here in Kansas City, and then sold the retail to someone else. Sold some green coffee for a couple of years, and then came on full-time with the Specialty Coffee Association to work in our education programs. There's a reason I'm sharing that with you, and I'll get to that in just a moment as we continue to talk about this program. Now, this particular program is meant to be very customizable for learners, but it's complex. It's a large program, and so we're going to be taking our time to go through that today. Now, this particular webinar is designed for people who want to be authorized trainers in this program, but I do know that there are several of you who are joining this webinar to learn more about just the program. You may be interested as one of my colleagues, maybe you're on as a potential learner, or just somebody who wants to know about the coffee technician program that we go along. So we've designed today's discussion for that purpose. So there's going to be several points where the bus is going to stop and you can get off or you can stay on, and we'll be taking questions throughout the session. So as you can see, we have a program overview. It's going to be talking about the program in general for more of what the learner would see or the market would see. Then I'll be transitioning, we'll stop, we'll take some questions along the way there. Then we'll transition into the selection process itself. And then we're going to get into the weeds a little bit. We're going to get into the details of the actual application itself. So I'll be letting you know as we make those transitions, because some of you may, want to exit at that time, but everyone is welcome to stay to the end. I just want you to know that it's going to get quite detailed as we go along through this. So let's talk about this program in general, just a program overview. One of the guiding themes of this is we wanted to make sure that this program is of value to those who purchase it. As I mentioned, I've been a business owner, and I wanted to mention that so that you understand that I know how it feels to write the check right? So I understand the need when it comes to value of these programs. It needs to be a value to the learners, to the authorized trainers who are teaching it, and it's part of us keeping education programs like this sustainable is making sure that the value is there. And we do that through having good rigor and intense, dense training that's applicable at the appropriate levels. And that's some of the guiding principles as we go through this program. So this, in the basics of this program, follow very closely how we operate our other education programs. We have groups of volunteer subject matter experts who come together and help us create a curriculum. Okay, and that, what is a curriculum? And I'm going to kind of dig into that a little bit deeper in a moment, but that's a set of learning objectives and topics, and then as well, written and practical exams. These folks help us put that together. Once those materials are put together, we have authorized trainers who then offer classes, design classes at their own calendar, according to their own calendar and their own fees for learners. And then those learners take a written and a practical exam at the completion of the course, and then earn a certificate for that. So once again, things start with volunteer subject matter experts working with staff to make sure that we're covering an appropriate and relevant, defensible amount of information within these courses. Authorized trainers sign an agreement with the SCA to deliver this content, and the learners participate, take the assessments, and walk off with certificates. So again, each one of the courses I'm going to be talking about result in a certificate. And I feel like this is probably a really good time to address what this program isn't. This is not a certification program, nor is it an authorization program that's connected to any kind of warranty work or anything like that. That would be more manufacturer specific. This is an education and a certificate program that is laying the groundwork for someday being able to put together an accredited certification program that can be more global in nature. And so this program itself has lots of level of rewards, lots of education, lots of, as you can see, certificates at the end, but it is not a certification nor an authorization program. But I think you'll find it's very valuable and rigorous as we go through. And I'll answer some more questions about that shortly. Let's see. Yeah. So this program is broken down into modules and then courses. And I'm going to take you through those modules so, one by one, and then we're going to talk about how those courses are set up. The first module that I'm going to talk a little bit about is hydraulics. This is everything about how water moves through a coffee machine in all its various forms, liquid, steam, and so on and so forth. Electrical, the name is pretty self-explanatory there. This deals with all of the electrical components within a coffee machine. I will note that it's not so much about programming at that point, so much as it is how electricity is used and moves through a machine and those basics. Water and preventive maintenance. This is where water analysis, treatment systems, and technology live. Also cleaning and preventive maintenance, all the way from simple preventive maintenance tasks to at the professional level, setting up PM programs for your customers or for sale. Coffee machines, this is where the history of coffee machines lives. There'll be history, context. This is where someone would learn the difference between AB and EE, super automatic, semi-automatic, fully automatic, automatic, and all of those things. But just a deeper dive into coffee machines and innovations in our industry. Operations management, this is technician workflow, customer service, work order preparation, parts inventory control, everything that kind of happens in the hub of a technical service company. And then finally, coffee preparation. Coffee preparation is so important because so often our technicians are like piano tuners. This is something Chad Bays says is, you're expected to tune the piano and then also know how to play the piano. And that's why we've included coffee preparation as a part of this. And that's basically a curated version of our barista skills and brewing curriculums, curated to fit a coffee technician's application. And so preparing folks to understand the desired outcome of the equipment, being able to, at the higher levels, being able to train customers, orient them, set up equipment, test equipment, even conduct experiments when it comes to performance tuning at that point. And then, as you can see here, there is a foundation, intermediate, and professional level course in each module. Now, as you can see, that's 18 courses if you do that math real fast. And so that's a lot. It's a big program. But this isn't a program that's set up where you're meant to take everything. It's meant to be customizable so that you're only investing in the education that fits your needs from that. And so here's some examples. Let's say that you hired a electrical engineer or somebody with a lot of electrical background in the work that they've done before, is maybe an HVAC technician or something like that. They've got that. And you might decide to not spend any money teaching them about electrical, but you might want to invest in more information for them to understand how water moves through the machine, preventive maintenance, water treatment, water analysis, orienting them to the world of coffee machines and what they do and where we find certain types of machines and the best application. They may not know anything about coffee, and so you may want to invest in some training at that end. Or let's say that you instead hire a barista that shows some technical acumen. They show a lot of potential. They're kind of an equipment nerd, but they already know coffee. They don't need to spend any more time learning about coffee. They've got that. You might invest in hydraulics, electrical, water, and preventive maintenance in the bundle, if you wish. And then that would put them on a path for more successful on-the-job training later. But then there's also going to be some who, for them, this program is going to offer maybe one track. Maybe there's something that they just want to go all the way through one, like operations management. You may have all the technical acumen, but looking for ways to make your business more efficient or the way your operations more efficient. And that's exactly what this path is for. In fact, you might hire someone in your technical service company who's mostly going to work in the office. They're going to answer phones. They may be involved in some tech dispatch and something like that. And so you might decide to invest in something that looks like this, where you prepare them for the complete operations management module, but preparing them to know exactly what they're talking about when it comes to the basics of brewing and espresso extraction, coffee machines, and water and preventive maintenance to provide better customer service even over the phone with that. So those are just a few examples of how you might take advantage of this program. Now, I've talked a little bit about the modules across, but let's dive into a little bit more about what happens at the courses. I think as I've visited with people about this program, there's a lot of curiosity about what happens at each level, right? And that makes perfect sense. As we work in creating this curriculum, that's quite the job, is knowing what's appropriate for foundation, intermediate, and professional, right? That's a challenge. And so let's take a little bit of a closer look at those courses. When creating curriculum, we subscribe to a construct known as Bloom's taxonomy, okay? And it kind of helps us determine the steps of developmental adult learning that are appropriate for these different levels, and also helps us keep in mind the culture of safety that we want to have embedded throughout this program. And so I guess I should make that point really clear. Safety is going to be something that is paramount throughout this whole program and has created some ways that this will be different than our other education programs. And I'll be mentioning that more as we kind of go through. So at the foundation level, this is truly for someone who is at the fundamental entry level. And so at this point, all we want them to do is understand and remember. So like in hydraulics foundation, they're learning basically an anatomy lesson is a big part of what they're doing in this course about all the hydraulic components. They're not reaching in, taking them out. We're not removing and replacing at foundation. We're learning about the components, the paths that they're within, that are comprised by these components, They learn about fittings, and at the end, they can successfully, or they're tested on the ability to successfully and safely connect that machine to a water supply. So at that point, we do get into a little bit of an apply and demonstrate at the foundation, but a lot of that happens at the intermediate level. That's when we're going to start to see people getting more inside the machines, removing, replacing, showing best practices when it comes to just like the kinesthetic, tactile, like, how your hands work, and working on those things inside the machine. And then as we get into the professional classes, that's where the heavier leanings, particularly in hydraulics, electrical, and water and preventive maintenance, that's where we get more into the diagnostic, troubleshooting, investigating, and preparing that learner to recognize the benefits and drawbacks of new innovations as they come out. So that's a little bit of a peek into where we are when it comes to what happens at the different levels of those classes. So let's take a look at, I'm going to pause before we start talking about what's included in the curriculum and take a look at the questions real quick and see if there's anything that we can answer. Looks like we had some problem with the audio. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, it looks like all of our questions have to do with audio. You all good?
Audio got resolved fine, yep.
Okay, good. This is also being recorded, so if anybody has any audio problems, each of you will receive a link to this recording afterwards, and so you'll be able to catch up from that. So you've heard me mention curriculum.
We have one question.
Oh, what's the question?
Sorry. If we define safety as in having no accidents.
Would you say that safety is no accident? Chad, is that a question? Are you being, or are you being funny? That's a good one. Safety is no accident, for sure. I'll take a follow-up question on that if you'd like, Chad. Let's talk about the curriculum while we kind of clear that up. I've mentioned curriculum a couple times, and those of you who are interested in becoming trainers may be wondering what that means, what all is included in that. And so I took this excerpt from a draft of our electrical foundation curriculum to just kind of show you the framework and the structure of how this curriculum is built. Each course is broken down into sections, right? And those sections then have topics, and then the real currency of our curriculum, like the building units, are learning objectives. And these are written in a way that are answering the question, by the end of this course, the learner will be able to blank. And as you can see here, we have that section where it's electrical concepts, a topic. At this point, and this topic is about the electrical circuit, and then we have some objectives. For example, by the end of this course, they should be able to define an electrical circuit. They should be able to define continuity, and they should be able to differentiate a series circuit from a parallel circuit. Then the curriculum also includes some AST notes from the content creators so that they know more about what we're after. There may be prescriptions here for suggested discussions or some other activities or just key points. And then all of the written exams or exam questions. Eventually, all of these written exams will be online. It helps us protect the integrity of this course and this program by being able to randomize tests, control quality. We'll be able to analyze data that we get from questions and see how they're performing, see if they're fair or unfair, inaccurate. It gives us more control over the program itself and the quality of that. But then also, and I think this is a key point, all of these learning objectives and where we get the information for these questions are backed up by references and resources. This is not just the collective opinion of 4 or 5 people that get together in groups. Our goal is to be able to point to a reference or resource for as much as we possibly can. Now, because there's not a whole lot of textbooks out there about coffee machines, we may have to rely more on manufacturer manuals and some of those resources, and make sure that we're covering a wide range of those brands and manufacturers as we go through. But I think that's a key point here, is this is not just based on a collective like hive mind with this. All these creators are creating questions based on a particular resource and pointing back to that. So that's just kind of a look at what I mean when I say curriculum. So once again, this is a module-based program. You don't have to take all the classes. I will say that there is still in development as we put this program together. There are going to be opportunities for recognition throughout the program, in addition to the individual certificates. Those are still being developed. We're still thinking through that to make sure that it fits within the broader goals of our education programs when it comes to recognizing you for your investment in education, so that you can pass that on to your customers and show them that you have invested in that education as well. So, as I've mentioned, this is a program where we have curriculum created by content creators, goes to authorized trainers, which is what brings us here today, and then to learners. Now, let's talk a little bit about the way that the fees work with all this, because this is a product that we're talking about where people are investing in it, and that means that there's going to be fees involved. And I want to talk a little bit about how that money moves. Okay, so this is an SCA program, and we're engaging with authorized trainers who then engage in a 3-year license with the SCA. And there's a license fee associated with entering into that license. So they buy a license in order to deliver this curriculum and this product to learners. Now those learners then pay a course tuition that is set by the ASTs. The ASTs, again, are designing their own classes based on that curriculum. They're also setting their own prices for what they offer. And so they calculate that, they put their offering out to potential learners. Learners pay that course tuition plus an admin fee that covers the certificates and all the administration of the program. So again, ASTs pay a license fee, learners pay a course tuition and an admin fee from that. Then we use that money to do all of the things that we do as an organization. We support the further development of this program. All of the things that we do, we use revenue that's generated from this and our events to do all the good work in specialty coffee. The research, development of further education programs, the publications that we do, the communities that we support, the competitions that we hold. And so participating in this program not only spreads best practices and better safety standards when it comes to how coffee technology is supported, but it also indirectly supports everything else we do to create a sustainable specialty coffee industry. So you're doing a lot of good just by even participating in the program, which I think is pretty cool. So we're going to kind of move into trainer recruitment and selection. I'm going to check the questions real quick. How are we doing on questions? Anything?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions. One was about the seminars, if they can be online or if they'll be in person.
Okay.
Asking about the practical exams.
Great question. This is a skills-based test. The practical exams will be in person. Now, the knowledge parts, or the knowledge-based learning objectives and those assessments, the written exam will be taken online, and maybe even taken online in the space where it's taught. But now this is a skills-based course, and so the practical exams will be held and proctored by the trainer in person. Great question. Any others before I move on?
Yeah, and then we had one about pricing guidelines or recommendations for new ASTs to use.
That's a great question. And I think that that's going to be something that there's going to be kind of a price discovery period as we move through this. I think my guess is that many trainers are going to look at the current pricing of the coffee skills program and the current pricing of the coffee sustainability program, and taking a look at those number of days and investment and calculating it from there. Some of those discussions will have a little bit more as people enter into the next phase of becoming an authorized trainer, but I have a feeling that that's going to be one of the things they consider in the calculation of their pricing, other than the investment in all stuff. You know, this is a program that's going to involve, you know, having a lot of dedicated equipment to the program, and trainers are going to have to calculate that into their pricing. Does that help? answer the question for that person?
I believe so. We can come back to it later on too if there's still more questions on those topics.
Sounds good. Is that it?
That's it for now.
Cool. So I'm about ready to transition into how we're going to be conducting the trainer recruitment and selection. If you want to stay with us, great. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. So let's just jump into it there. In this program, we're, as I mentioned before, looking for a rigorous, high-quality program here. Safety is of paramount, or is of high importance in this program. And so we've basically been building the selection process based around these 3 points. We want to engage with qualified professionals who exhibit these 3 things. And the selection process is based on these 3 things. Career experience and expertise in the subject matter is a must. Actually having time in the field, experiencing what it's like to be a technician, and that we're going to talk about that in the application process a little bit more, but not just having taken classes, but having a work history where you've put those into place in the field. But then also, you can know a lot about this topic, but in this particular program, we're also looking for people who have a skill as a trainer, an instructor. And so we're going to be looking for that in this application process, is for folks to show a certain acumen for education for that. But then also, we want ASTs in the CTEC-P program to be active, and to be offering courses and to be great ambassadors for this program and to be visible trainers. And so there are some requirements in place that will require you to be active as we go through this. So that's who we're looking for in this program. And it's important as you consider whether or not you want to engage in this program to understand some of the expectations for those who become ASTs. If you jump through all the hoops and you become one of these ASTs, what are the expectations from that? And I just want to bring up these 3 in particular so that you kind of know a little bit more about what you're getting into. Minimum number of certifications. We're looking for active trainers, and I wrote certifications as I should say certificates, but basically we're looking for people who are going to offer classes and do this and aren't just building a resume. So we have in place a minimum number of certificates and students that you need to put through over a 3-year period for that. Same with continuing professional development. We want trainers who are active in continuing to learn themselves. And so we have a system that we use in the Coffee Skills program where trainers log continual professional development activities. And that doesn't mean a continual investment. There are lots of activities that those of you who are active in the coffee community are going to be able to achieve your points just by continuing to do what you do and not spending any more money. But there's a rubric, or there's a set number of points per activity, and it's definitely achievable for active people. But also, we're looking for people who can demonstrate our SEA core values. So in order to re-up, you need to show that you're not going outside of the code of conduct that we subscribe to in the SEA. So there's just some of the expectations that we have of instructors after they become ASTs. Here is a.
And if I can jump in here, we've got half a dozen questions that I think are pretty related to this section. If you think they're better at the end, just let me know. But I can give you a couple of those now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hit them.
So we have a question about how many trainers have been selected so far, and that could be ASTs or that could be trainers for the ASTs of the CTEC program.
Okay, the answer is 0. This is the beginning of the process. We have been delivering a few of these courses at CTG, or Coffee Technician Guild events, or other SEA events as kind of an R&D period. The people who have been delivering those classes have been content creators. So they're people who are already involved in the program. No, we've selected none for this program. Next question.
And then on a similar note, in which countries will this initial trainer recruitment be taking place? And so then where would the ASTs take the practical exams after the selection?
Great question. Unless, I think we're going to have to unwind that a little bit. I think a better way for me to answer that question is what language will this be released in first? This is being developed in English, but then will be translated into the English plus 6 that we have right now. And let's see if I can remember what those are. So English, French, Spanish, German, Italian, and I'm missing one. Portuguese, I think. Anyway, there's 6 or 7. Chinese and Korean is what we'll be translating those in. And then as demand grows, that helps us know where we need to invest in translation. There is no geographic boundary to the selection process here. It's not starting in one country or the other. This is a global recruitment and selection process. So that's one. Two, there is no practical exam in this selection process. Right? There is an application and it's all online, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But part of the process that you'll see right here in the middle of the screen is attending our AST course, which is the normal course of action for after you apply to become an AST, you take an AST course. That's how you get onboarded to our way of delivering education. You learn about how the program works and all of those things. And those are also offered globally. And we're just going to be monitoring the selections and making sure that those are available to you for that. So there's not a practical exam in this selection process.
And then kind of a two-fold question coming off of this is, must an AST be advanced in all 18 modules, or can they be authorized for only certain segments?
Great question. I'm going to get to that in about 3 or 4 slides. So,
and then for this Coffee Seed Tech program, if you can't, is it true you can't become an AST if you have no experience in maintenance or repairing machines? Is that an accurate deduction?
I think that's accurate. Okay. Particularly, I would say someone with no experience is not going to score well during the selection process. We definitely want to have career experience in this because you're going to be training other technicians in delivering this program, and you need that real world experience in order to do that safely.
Great. And then one more question about locations. For someone to do the first as an AST in a module, yeah, it's about whether it must be in the US or Europe, and if there's a calendar for that. And I would say that's all stuff that hasn't been defined yet, because we're at the earlier stages of just finding out where there's interest in people becoming ASTs for this program. Is that correct, Ben?
And I think, and this is a great question, and I apologize for not addressing this clearer in the beginning. One of the things that makes this different than the Coffee Skills program, if you're a current AST familiar with the Coffee Skills program, or you know what the requirements are to become an AST in the Coffee Skills program, this is different, particularly different during this inaugural year. This is not a you take hydraulics foundation, intermediate, professional, and then become an AST. That's not what this is. Those are not even a requirement because they don't exist yet. We're still in the middle of building those courses. So in lieu of having foundation, intermediate, and professional as requirements, and then you become an AST, that's been replaced by this selection process and by this application process. So it's a different way of becoming an AST than what you're used to in the Coffee Skills program. Completely different. Now, down the road, it may be foundation, intermediate, professional, plus work experience, plus some of these other things on your way to becoming an AST in this program. But you do not have to take foundation, professional, intermediate in this in order to apply for this program. Hopefully that clears it up.
All right.
Hit us on the chat and let me know if I need to clear that up. So this application.
I think that's good for now, and we can come back to these. Yeah.
Wonderful. So
thanks,
again,
Ben.
Geography, we're hoping that we have lots of applications from all over the world in this process that we're holding 3 times in 2020, so that this program spreads, through the ASTs themselves there. So let me just take you through this process, if I might, so that you can kind of see what we're doing. And this is going to happen 3 times in 2020. In designing this, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just a a one-time, get the word out, get some ASTs, and then we roll. We wanted to take this year to make sure that there was plenty of time for people to engage, apply for the program, so that we could announce them at various times as well and build some momentum for the program. We had designed this to where there would be some people selected and announced, and some people coming on board right before Expo in April, right before World of Coffee in May, and then a third round in, not May, but June, and then a third round in August. And so that's the impetus for why we're doing it right now. So for each one, we'll have an informational webinar just like this where we can answer questions and share any changes that may have happened. And then there's an application period. The application I'm going to be talking about in today's call will go live on our sca.coffee education section, Coffee Technicians Program page that many of you probably visited to subscribe to this webinar tomorrow. And so that will be available for you to start submitting your applications. And then those applications are going to be reviewed by a selection committee. The selection committee is going to involve stakeholders from our coffee technology and manufacturing community, staff, education experts who come together and just score and review applications. After that process, there are going to be invitations extended to applicants who meet the standards for them to take the next step in the process. And if they accept that, then we're going to start talking about scheduling them for an AST course and then entering into that license agreement. And then that will trigger the distribution of curriculum that we have done thus far. And again, this is going to happen 3 times in 2020. And there's not a particular advantage to coming in one of these rounds as opposed to the other than just being an early adopter and kind of getting in a little sooner from that. Otherwise, we've set up all the fees, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, to be at the end of the year. So it's not like you have to worry about that in any one of these rounds. Any questions about this before I move on?
No, I think that's good for now.
All right. So let's talk. Okay, if there's going to be a part, there's going to be a part of this program that is difficult to kind of get our mind around, where there's a complexity that we need to spend some time on. This is going to be it. Now, the person, whoever's out there who asked about qualifying for different modules and different licenses, this is where I'm going to answer that question. Now, in the Coffee Skills program, for those of you who are familiar with it, you're very module specific in your licenses, right? You take Barista Skills Foundation, Intermediate, Professional, and you become a Barista Skills AST, PAL. Same with brewing. It's very, they're very siloed in that nature. You could just be one. Now, the nature of this particular discipline is one where it doesn't divide up that nicely, and not nicely. It makes a lot of sense for this program to have more cross-module prerequisites. Take hydraulics and electrical. So much at the higher levels of this involves digging in and dealing with components that aren't just hydraulic or electrical, they're electrical mechanical, right? So there's some crossover. You're not going to be able to do high-level troubleshooting of hydraulics without understanding, the electrical components of those things. Also, those who are going to be qualified to talk about hydraulics are also going to be qualified to talk about electrical. So what we, and also water, preventive maintenance, all those things are really closely tied together. So what we've done is designed this program a little bit different in the fact that we have a core modules combined license. And so you either teach all 3 of these, you're either qualified to teach all 3 of these or none of them. So it goes together. So we're looking for qualified professionals who are going to be, meet the standards to deliver these together. So instead of, picking hydraulics and water and preventive maintenance or electrical, like either one of these, it all comes together at the risk of being redundant. I'm sorry if I repeated that several times. But so when you see core modules in the application guide or something like that, that's this. And so that license will come together. And because we know we're asking ASTs to, in this program, to engage in 3 licenses as compared to 1, we've adjusted the price accordingly, because we know that you're digging into more of that. So in this step, in this selection process, these are the combined core modules that we're focusing on in this step. This is the part of the program that is of the highest priority when it comes to curriculum development, are these core modules. But now you'll see these other three over here are ones where the qualifications to teach the content here might be different. The way that coffee machines looks like it might come together is it could require knowledge and an acumen where you wouldn't have to necessarily be at the trainer level in hydraulics, electrical, and water preventive maintenance to deliver this information. Same with operations management. You know, a trainer in operations management may not be fully prepared to spend a lot of time with intense troubleshooting with a multimeter, but they're going to have a different skill set. So that's why it's off on its own as a single license as well. Same with coffee preparation. Now, at the risk of adding, I don't want to add any confusion, but I want to speak to the current ASTs for a moment here. For current ASTs who are brewing and barista, so if you are currently a brewing and barista skills AST right now, this, upon request, is going to be something that you can just add for free. This is going to be something, since it's a curated version of barista skills and brewing, this is going to be something you're going to be able to offer as an add-on to what you already do without paying for an additional license. That's just going to be something that you can request to be added onto your portal. For others, there's a different set of standards for this if you're not a current AST that involve investing in some of the brewing and barista skills training that we offer there. So again, core module bundles, that's what we're developing first. That's the first curriculum that's going to be available. And that's the license that we're looking at now. And so I'm going to pause because this is where I think we're going to be helping people understand this a little bit more. And I want to take all the time we need to answer questions about this. Do we have any that have come in about this here?
Not about this section so far. Okay. I have a couple questions again about where the practical exams will take place, because people have concerns about certain countries have different concerns around visas. But is it fair to say that if there's not opportunities for everyone in this first round, as the program gains more momentum and we have more and more trainers, there will be increasing opportunities and locations?
Absolutely. Something that would help is those of you who have questions about the practical exams and their locations. I feel like I need to understand better what practical exams you're talking about. If you're thinking there's still a practical exam between a person who wants to be an AST in this program and then becoming an AST, I want to make sure I clear up that there is no practical exam between now and becoming an AST in this selection process. But if you're asking about the availability of these courses geographically, which include a practical exam, that's going to be something that we hope to achieve by having a network of ASTs around the globe delivering this program. So what I might ask, Sierra, is if we can capture some of the email addresses of some of these folks.
Absolutely. Yep.
Are concerned about geography. I'd like to maybe address those directly so that I can help there.
Yeah, sounds good. We can follow up on a one-to-one basis, no problem.
Awesome.
And now I have a couple questions coming in about this section.
Okay.
The first one is, what will we learn about in the module coffee machine? And then is it the lack of steam/pressure that separates the coffee machines from the core bundle? Just kind of on the same topic.
That's a great question. Keep in mind that some of this curriculum can only answer like broad strokes about what's going to happen in that module. But in the coffee machines module, it's not about fixing coffee machines at that point. It's about introducing people who may have the technical acumen of how solenoids work. They understand all of these other things. But it's more about categories of equipment and history of equipment, innovations in that equipment, maybe performance tuning, some of those things. So it's not about reaching in and fixing coffee machines at that level. That's what you learn in hydraulics and electrical, water and preventive maintenance. Coffee machines, though, is going to be more about Just the categories, like these machines that are behind me. Of you know, I'm sorry that I can't get more detailed in that, but that's part of what we're developing. It's more about introducing people and taking them through understanding the world of coffee machines, their configurations, their applications, and all those things. So, and if the person asking that is interested in that more, I'd love to connect.
I think you covered it great. It looks like that's it for questions for now.
Okay. Let's see here. So let's talk about the money. Talk about the fee structure. Now, hopefully, everyone on this call who's interested in becoming an AST in this program has downloaded the application information guide, which is available. Let's see. I think I've got that I can put in the chat window. Yeah. Here's the address to that. That is going to take you through everything you need to know about applying for this. And it's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about for the next 20 to 30 minutes of this. But let's talk about pricing for this. A lot of the fee structure for this program has been derived from what we do in the Coffee Skills program and others, which is having a base price plus modules that you teach. And so we've tried to make this as equivalent as we can with the CSP program in that base price. So entering into that base license with the SCA is $1,800 or €1,500 for 3 years. It's a 3-year license. Then the core module, remember that group of 3, would be $600 with that. And then the other modules, as those come online, would be in that 200 and 190 euro each category there. So we had to develop kind of what the base, like the regular pricing was going to be, like a list price. But we also knew that in this introductory time, where we're selecting people to come on, at the same time that we're building curriculum, it's not like you're going to sign up as an AST and then immediately I'm going to have all 9 courses in those modules ready. Several of them are. By the time we end this process, you're going to have courses that you can deliver to learners. But we knew that this is going to be something under development and that there's going to be a growing period as people come online and you need more time to get your classes together before you're going to be able to offer it. So we wanted to kind of reduce the initial burden in entering into the program. So for this, let me show you the introductory. So during 2020, as we go through this program, basically we took that total, so $1,800 plus the $600 core module, which in US dollars would be $2,400, and basically just calculated, okay, so like if we take into consideration the first 2 years, we basically just give the first 2 years included in that, to where you're only basically paying for a third of that license. In addition to that, we're not making that license due until the end of this year. So December 31st, 2020 is when that would be due. But no matter when you come in to the program, whether it's the first round or the third round, we're not going to start the clock on your license until January 1st, 2021. That means your 3-year license will go all the way to December 31st, 2023. So we wanted to bring on authorized trainers who can be flexible with us as we grow this and kind of reduce that financial burden at the beginning. So I think that this might generate some questions. So I just want to kind of go over it again. This is the base that you see on your screen. This is what it would normally look like if we had just launched it full price. And then this is what we're doing for this introductory year. And as we get into the next year, I'm not exactly sure what all the license fees would look like at that point because they're subject to change, but this is what we will be doing for this year. So I definitely want to give enough time for any questions related to this. Have we got anything coming in yet?
Just a question clarifying that, like, as of today, people who are selected for this process, it costs $800 US.
That is correct. And that is the intention throughout 2020. So whether you go through the first round or the third round, along the process, at some point, we'll be paying $800 by the end of this year.
Great. That's it for questions about the costs. We have a few more questions about modules that we can get to if we have time. Otherwise, we can follow up with people individually.
I think it would be good to kind of knock out some of the modules now. I'm about ready to dive into the application itself. And so it's kind of now or never on that. So let's talk about it real quick.
The modules? All right. All right. So for the core modules, will the AST be required to be able to instruct / be proficient in hydro, electric, and WPM? Is that what we want to understand?
I think I heard half of that. I heard you say hydroelectric, I think. And then what did you say?
So for the core modules, what we want to take away from that is that the ASTs are required to be proficient in those. Those are ones they have to have.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And also, can the classes be given separately or back to back? I'm not sure if that means given or taken.
Oh, great question.
Can you take all 3 foundation during the same period?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what you're going to see in this program is that we will have some mandated wait periods, particularly between the intermediate and professional level. I think that will be something you can expect from this as we deliver more information about prerequisites and wait periods between. Now, that's just from course to course, but you can definitely take, like, for example, a trainer could absolutely offer a 4-day bundle of hydraulics foundation, electrical foundation, water preventive maintenance, and if they're qualified or have someone that can come in and deliver a coffee preparation, or a 3-day bundle of hydraulics, electrical, and water preventive maintenance foundation. So, like, you can definitely bundle cross modules, but you're not going to be able to bundle intermediate and professional into one. There's going to be a wait period, I imagine, and in particular modules for that.
And then, so if you're already an AST for coffee skills, is it just the license fees you'd have to pay for, or do you have to do a separate for AST for CTEC?
Great question. And I believe that we have that information on the website. Let's see. Okay, short answer is you're not going to have to pay your AST license again, like that base. There's a different calculation for current ASTs. And I believe that's on the website, and not something I can look at right now. So we'll get that price for you.
Great. I'm just looking through a couple more. And do we have any idea how long it takes from start to finish for the core modules?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, now again, the timing of this, like we give instructors kind of definitely minimum hours of instruction per class. Like they can't schedule it for shorter than it needs to be. But you're going to find some trainers who extend, like there'll be some trainers who do electrical in one day and some who decide to do all day instruction and tests the next day. So that's kind of up to them. But I think generally speaking, you're going to find the foundation courses are going to be designed to be done in one day. Intermediates are going to be in that 2 to 3 day range, and you'll find professionals to be 3 or 4 days, generally speaking, as they get developed. But a lot of that is in the control of the trainer. We set a minimum, but there's not a max, so they can add as much value to this program as they wish.
And then we have one more question, which is if someone goes through this program, can they start teaching right away?
Again, I think as you go through the program, it's not going to be a take foundation, intermediate, professional, become an AST. There's going to be other steps involved that will involve or that will need to show some career experience. So, for example, if your career experience doesn't involve any kind of technology, it's not like you're going to be able to take hydraulics, electrical, all the way through professional, and then be able to turn around and teach it. It's not built as a closed circuit like that.
Great. And then one more question about costs. Will there be any discounts for additional modules?
No.
I feel like this first year is quite discounted as it is because it's being formulated as we go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then one last question about coffee machines. Most run on a 380 volt three-phase power, which is high voltage. Does that mean that some people are going to need to get national electrician's certification?
National electrician certificate.
I guess that.
Yeah, so I think that person may have some. Okay, when you say, I want to clarify that a little bit. When you say getting national electrician certification, do you mean as an instructor? Is that what we're talking about?
That I'm not sure. Maybe we want to follow up this one by email, and then we can clarify that in the application guide and on the website. So that information we can update when we have more.
Absolutely. And I think as you kind of see what we're looking for in the applications, if we're talking about trainers and the certifications they would have, I think you'll kind of see a little bit what we're looking for as we go through. But again, that's not really related to the coffee machines module. All right. So let's talk about, now we're going to get into the application. Now I just posted the link to this application guide. I want to make sure that all of you get that. This is going to be handy in helping you prepare and gather all the information that you would need to complete the AST application. Now this application that will go live tomorrow, it's a Google that you'll be filling out there. It's also set to where you can go and edit. So this is something where you can open it and start and then come back later. So, you can take your time, gather your materials, and input them as you get them in. So that's a neat feature for this particular application. There are 8 components to the application, and I'm going to go through these in some detail for the next period of time. Feel free to ask questions along, and Sierra, you can interrupt me after each section if there's a question about that particular component of the application. Just feel free to jump in. First, just profile information. Who you are, where you're from. As I said, we are very interested in having a global perspective and representation in this program. So we'd like to know who you are, where you're from, current affiliations company-wise, and what you do. So learning a little bit about you. And then also learning a little bit about your industry experience and work history. This speaks directly to what you've done. Credentials and certificates, we're going to talk about these in particular. Academic degrees, training and instructional experience. Remember that second bullet of what we're looking for people to exhibit is an acumen when it comes to education. We want to kind of know what kind of experience you have when it comes to training and instruction. Part of that is going to be a sample lesson plan. And I'm going to take you through those steps in just a moment. We also want to know about your intentions, like your availability to participate in this program, what you do in industry. And so we have a section for you to kind of share some of that with us, and then letters of recommendation. And these are quite prescriptive, as you'll see in the application information guide. And I'll kind of tell you what we're looking for there so that you can pass that on to your recommenders. So let's go through each one of these components individually. I think I've already covered profile information. You understand what that is, since that's just knowing who you are, where you are, what you do. But industry experience and work history. There, like, what work have you done? And what is your experience with coffee technology? Are you someone who owns, or like the second one here, roles in support of coffee equipment? So like, have you been an HVAC technician and taught that? Have you, actually that's probably the next one, but like, are you in a support role for a coffee manufacturer? Do you own your own service technician, technical services company? Those kinds of questions. What is your experience when it comes to coffee technology professionally? And do you have an experience with a variety of coffee equipment? In this curriculum, there are requirements to teach on different types of equipment, from heat exchanger machines to multi-boiler machines to different styles of batch brewers and those things. So having a wide knowledge in professional experience with coffee equipment is definitely something that will score good points on this application. Credentials and certificates. This is where we want to know about any third-party credentials you may have. This may include warranty authorizations. This may include, this is something that's really interesting because so many countries are different in their regulatory practices when it comes to people who work on coffee machines. Like there's gas cards and electrical certifications and things like that that different technicians have to meet in different parts of the world. This is where you would share that information with us. Also, if you've received some workplace safety training, I've earned some certificates in that world, this part of the application is where we want you to share that information with us. Food handler, food safety, all of those things, any of those third-party credentials and certificates that are not academic in nature, this is where you'll share that with us on the application. But now there's a separate part here for any academic degrees. Those of you who have industrial engineering degrees, electrical engineering degrees, electronic engineering, or any other kind of academic degree that you may have gotten from a secondary or post-secondary education, depending on where you are in the world and how that's managed. That's what we're looking for here, but not manufacturer training certificates. That's not what we're looking for in the academic degrees. That would be in the previous section, under third-party credentials and certificates there. That's what we would be looking for. Now, each one of these is going to be reviewed by a selection committee. And I'm going to stop here and talk about this just for a second, because I feel like there may be some out there that are seeing this and being like, well, I've got a ton of work experience. I've been in this for 25 years, and I've got all these third-party credentials, but I never got an academic degree. This doesn't disqualify you, okay? So like there's scoring along this, and so it's not like this is, or the others are like you have to have that when it comes to academic degrees. And I just want to make that clear. We're placing a lot of weight on that work history and industry experience, but when it comes to the difference between those third-party credentials and those certificates and academic degrees, I don't want anybody to feel like you don't have an academic degree that you're out, and that's not the case. And we'll be kind of working that into how we review the applications. We also want to make sure that you have training and instructional experience, or at least know what that is for you. And so, for example, this is where you should tell us if you have experience as a current AST, if you have experience delivering instruction. We're also, in this application, there is a way for you to upload either links to or a file. If you happen to have any recording of you doing training or documentation of you doing training, you can share it. It's not required, it's optional. But we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to share that information. If you do, you'll be able to upload to articles maybe you've written or somewhere where you're sharing your knowledge in an instructional way for that. And so there's a section of the application for you to do that with us. And then probably a significant portion of this application involves the sample lesson plan. We want to know that we are engaging with education professionals who are subject matter experts in this, that show an ability to put together a lesson, to structure a learning experience for students, right? And so we're asking for a sample lesson plan. Now, lesson planning is something that we also teach in the AST course. So don't worry, we're not going to be holding your application to the standard of what we teach in the actual AST course. But we do want to get an idea of your ability to take a complex or a wide or a certain number of learning objectives and turn it into an instructional experience for people. And so what we've done is supplied you with, this appears in this application guide, right? A beginning of a trainer lesson plan. And this lesson plan is pulled right from our curriculum. So this won't be time wasted for any of you who are going to become trainers. Basically, taking a snippet out of our electrical curriculum and putting those here. And so you'll see in that application guide form that's I've spoke about several times, this lesson plan, you're going to be filling in blanks from this lesson plan in the online form. So we've included it in this download so that you can use it to kind of sketch out the information you're going to share with us. And so as you can see, we've given you a situation where you're going to be developing a little mini course that's about 2.5 hours long on digital multimeter and electrical testing. We've let you know some assumptions of what your students already know coming in, what they've learned prior to this point of your course, and then giving you specific learning objectives. And then you're going to go through and tell us about the activities, including lecture. Lecture counts as an activity. And then you're going to tell us about what kind of materials that you would need to put on this class. So, for example, and hopefully you download this and you can kind of go through this with me, like what kind of resources do you need for information that you might be sharing with your students? What kind of informal assessments are you going to be doing throughout your lesson to make sure that they're prepared to do well on the written and practical exams? So what are you going to do to kind of check in with them throughout the course? What kind of equipment and supplies do you need in order to put on the course that you see on the screen? So like how many multimeters do you need for 6 learners, or how many do you plan to have available for them? What kind of components are you going to have available for them to conduct these tests on? What kind of power sources and those kinds of things, power supplies. Also printed materials, are you going to be using any handouts for this lesson? Is it going to be all on PowerPoint? What are going to be the visuals? And then kind of what's the breakdown of the day? So you're going to be kind of putting in how you see this 2.5 hours going, right? So like when are you going to do lecture? What kind of activities are they going to do? What are they going to see while they do this? Are they going to be looking at a PowerPoint while they're doing something? Are they going to do a handout? Will they be facing their own like a set of components in front of them? Things like that. So this is probably, that's a heavily weighted part of this application, is making sure that you have this done. And it's going to be something that will really help communicate to us your abilities when it comes to instructional design, or like a learning experience design for people. I've covered a lot. Sierra, do I need to pause to capture anything?
We do have a couple of questions. And because we are at the top of the hour, I just want to tell everyone that we have all your questions and we'll have them recorded just with all of our other attendance information. If we didn't have time to answer them, we'll reach out to you by email personally. If you have another question, I know Ben has his email at the end of all of our webinar slides. You'll be able to take note of that, reach out to him too. It's a complicated application process. There's a lot of parts to it right now, so we understand if you have a lot of questions. So the question that I think is most relevant to this section is about the learning object. I think that's what we're looking at right now, specific learning objectives.
Okay.
And it's saying that right now it covers electrical testing, but if someone would like to cover something else like hydraulic or solenoid, is that also an option?
No.
And what do we mean by time, activity, and visual, quote unquote, in applications?
Right. Okay. So I'll start with the first one. Unfortunately, no. As we put this in front of the selection committee, we would like to see, we would like to compare like to like, if we could. So we really want these lesson plans to address these learning objectives. Now, if you have something you're proud of on a different topic, a great place to put that in would be submitting that as a file in the previous section of the application. So got to do this, but if you have something else that you're, that you think that worth sharing with us, please do. The more information, the better. And then what was the second part of that one, Sierra?
And what are we asking for when we ask people for, quote unquote, we have time, activity, and a visual on the application form?
Yeah, and I think I could probably, and I regret not having this part of this one, I could show you one that I do and do that. But like when I'm talking about time, like you could put 0 here, and that's the beginning of the class. And so I want to see a time, like how much time you're going to spend in lecture, how much time you're going to spend in activity, like just basically your course outline, and how much time you're allotting to each part of what you're going to be doing in this section. The activity, this is where you basically can just put your class outline in here if you want to just say, we're going to start with a lecture on this topic, and we're going to get up and go over to a prep table and do some testing here. We're going to do some calculations, blah, 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 blah. So that's what you can hear. Visual is what they're going to be looking at during that portion. So if you're going to be giving a lecture and all the students are going to be looking up at a PowerPoint, you would just put that over here in the visual portion. So like, 0, introductory lecture. But then as you move, like you may actually have them looking at a worksheet, you may have them looking at a handout, you may have them looking at a machine or something like that. And so you basically want to track that. And this just helps you further on when you're done with your plan, know what your PowerPoint needs to look like, know what your visuals need to look like. So it puts all of your plan on paper. Hopefully that's helpful.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ben. And then one more about teaching modules. Is it possible to be a CTEC AST and only teaching single modules? And if so, is this available for 2020 intake?
That is a great question. Let's go back here. It's possible to be a CTEC P AST and teach only coffee machines, or to be a CTEC P AST and teach only operations management, or to be a CTEC P and only do coffee preparation. However, these core modules, they are combined. So, all of that. That's the current setup of the program.
And then back to the application, does it need to include extended lessons on basics of working with multimeter? I'm not entirely clear on that.
Okay.
Or do we have the ability to create one on other topics? And that kind of maybe goes back to what you said. You know, we have this application, the specifics on this application are for a reason, but if you have something you're proud of or something that you feel is going to be a different parallel example that reflects well on your skills, whether that's teaching or technical, you're welcome to include it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the answer. We want to handle this topic.
And if anyone joined a little later or missed it, Ben dropped a link to the application guide PDF in the chat. So you can see that on the drop-down chat window of this webinar in the control panel. So have a look at that. If you have any more specific questions about lesson plans, there's a lot of great information in there.
So let's go on to the second component. I know we've went over an hour, and hopefully you're still finding this is valuable information. Let's talk about availability and industry participation. Again, as I mentioned, as we went through all the components, this is where we want you to learn more about what your plans are and what you do in the industry. So this is where we want to give you a space to tell us about your life in the coffee industry, you know, how you currently share your expertise with other coffee professionals, and then your plans. I think as I've been visiting with people about this program, there are a lot of people with great plans on how they're going to create amazing experiences for learners. We wanted to make sure we had a space in this application for you to do that. So like if you're planning on building a facility where you're going to be focused on teaching coffee technicians, we want to know that. If you're someone who works for a manufacturer who's located in one part of the world, you're stationed in another part of the world, and you're planning on delivering this information someplace you don't live, you're going to be traveling, you're going to try to take it to some areas to make it more accessible. We want to hear from you on that. And that's what this section is all about, is letting you just kind of share your dreams for how you're going to, put this out there and partner with us in making this program a reality for that. So that's what that section is all about. And then finally, letters of recommendation. Now, I'm really going to point you to this application information guide because it has questions that you can give to your recommender, like the person you're asking to write this letter for you. It has questions that point them in the right direction for asking, because we're looking for two different letters. One speaks to you as an expert, as somebody who's qualified to deliver this information. And the other one speaks to your abilities as a trainer. So make sure you check a guide for those answers. And your recommender may not want to give that letter directly to you. They may want to send it in separately. The instructions for how to do that are in the guide. And so it gives you the email address to give to your recommender so that they can do that. So that would complete the application at that point. And so there's a lot of homework involved. Again, that's why we're making sure that we do this in 3 rounds. So if you find yourself at a busy time of your year, it's okay. You can enter in during a different round this year. But we want to make sure that this is a rigorous application process so that we engage with the highest quality professionals we can to make this a good start to the program. So that's where we are. So that wraps up the information I was going to deliver today. And so now we can just spend a little time with questions. I know I have some time. Any of you who this is my pastor time and you want to get off the bus, thank you for joining us today and listening to me go into this in detail. This is just the beginning of the conversation. I'll be available to everyone with any other questions that you may have. And let me see if I can get to there we go. this is how you can get a hold of me. And I want to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And so we can visit about that. Any other questions that have come in, Sierra, so far?
Yes, I think this one came up. This is one now, and I feel like I saw a different, similar version of this earlier. The recommendation letters need to be in English.
No.
Does all of the application need to be in English?
Great question. No. Man, I'm so glad you asked that. And it's at the top of the application instructions when you log in. Complete this application in a language that's comfortable with you. And then as we translate those coming in, if we have questions or we feel like we need a clarification on what you're trying to communicate, we will do that. So letters of recommendation can be in a language that the writer is comfortable with, as well as the application. Good question. Thank you.
And are we expecting a CV with the application, or is the application itself basically the CV?
The application is the CV. And so you would probably take information from your CV and input it in like these long form answer blocks that you'll see for industry experience, work experience, and those credentials. So this is your CV.
Great. It looks like that is all the questions we have for now.
Awesome.
Like I said, a lot came in through the course of this webinar. Thank you all so much for joining, making time for this, and for your active participation. We really appreciate it. And Ben and I will have a look through those questions later. If we feel like we missed anything, and I know I spoke with some of you via the question chat about following up in email personally. So you'll be hearing more from us. Thank you all so much.
I had Sierra with me. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Marty and Tootie for letting me use their space. Tootie's always great. She provides me with lots of snacks. Thank you, Tootie. Awesome. Okay, is that it?
All right. We will have one note, because a lot of people keep asking. Sorry, I didn't mention this. A recording of this webinar will go up on SCA Education YouTube channel. So you'll be able to rewatch this webinar, take your time, digest all the information. And I believe we also usually post them in the AST Facebook group. So you'll see this multiple places in the future. All right. Thank you all. Take care. Have a great rest of your days.
Bye, everyone.